welcome to episode 11 of 30 Plays in 30 Days, a live arts retrospective. I'm Miller Susan, and I'm the education director at Live Arts. Thank you so much for joining us or joining us again, as the case may be. Tonight, we'll be talking about the 2000-2001 season at Live Arts, and in a moment, I will be joined by the incredible Miki Listz and the wonderful Teresa Dowell-Vest. But first, I want to take a second to recognize one of our community partners, Mudhouse Coffee Roasters. Mudhouse has both gift cards and coffee for sale online, so please support them if you can. Their products, I don't need to tell anyone from Charlottesville, are absolutely divine, and they've been a fantastic and supportive community partner for Live Arts for many years. And now, please join me in welcoming local legend, Miki Listz. Hi, Miki.
Hi, Miller. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. It's so delightful to see you. Thank you so much for joining us for the 30 and 30 Festival.
It's my pleasure.
It's a total delight to get to talk to you about your work. A fun fact for our viewers, Miki was one of my very first movement teachers through her wonderful work in the Charlottesville City Schools.
Yes,
Miki,
when I went to, whoa.
But you've given so much to the community of Charlottesville over the years in so many capacities. Would you mind telling us more about yourself and your work and your relationship to Live Arts?
Well, I would be happy to. I came to Charlottesville in 1973 when I was married and my husband worked at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory here. And in those early years, in isolation, pretty much in desperate isolation, I did a lot of volunteer work in the public schools as my children grew older. And finally, when they were old enough, I have two sons, Jeff and Greg, who people might know. But anyway, as they grew older, I was noticing in Charlottesville that there's no support structure for the art of dance. You know, there were theater and other art forms, but dance was woefully underrepresented. The University of Virginia didn't have a dance department. It didn't even have a dance series, which was wow. Shocking to me, you know, for a university of that size to have no way of addressing that art form. So I started Miki Listz Dance Company to support the art of dance in the region and to bring dance to underserved audiences and to encourage the dance studios to work with one another and to give the serious dancers an outlet for their to show their technical skills and to perform. So basically, there were a lot of programs that we ran. One was the Community Children's Dance Festival, which brought together regional groups, and it was not a dance competition. This was an educational program to give the young people ages 8 to 18 the opportunity to experience 50-foot proscenium and the lights that were designed and the hazards of the stage and the rules and regulations of performing. Then for about 22 years, I ran this other program at McGuffey Art Center called the First Friday Dance Series. And that was an opportunity for independent choreographers and small dance companies to be paid to perform, to be given rehearsal space, which at the time, even that many years ago, ran from $25 to $75 an hour, even for rehearsal time.
Wow.
And then in addition to that, there was the adult dance company, and then we had a junior dance company, MLDC2. And so all of these different dimensions of supporting the art form, wherever I found it, were in play. So my connection with live arts then happened because I had taken the adult company to perform in New York at what was then Dance Theater Workshop and is now New York Live Arts, which I got a circular life here.
Coincidence.
I had wanted to show that piece in Charlottesville. I had a long-term connection with many live arts people, including Will Kerner, who had been, when I first started the dance company, he was our pro bono photographer for Miki Dance Company for many, many, many years, because he was interested in capturing movement, and so we had that relationship. John Gibson was our light designer in that show in 1993, and Patrick Reed ran the lights. And after that show, John asked me to collaborate with him on Three Penny Opera, which we did. Then the genius of John Gibson and his unbelievable drive and artistic vision sort of pulled everybody along with him. We were racing along to catch up, but John and I did, we did Assassins in '96, we did The Visit in 1996. John was trying to bring a lot more dance into the performances at Live Arts, so I did Dance Talk over there, and another show called Code Magenta. But then in 1998, we did the Journals of Lewis and Clark together, and that was a monster show. John brought in Martha Mendenhall to show us how to approach theater through the viewpoints. And that was very interesting to me because it was a normal transition from the Laban training that I had in dance to a codified version of Laban tailored for theater. So it was a very natural progression for me to start using the viewpoints.
I got to study briefly with Martha a few years ago. She and Sean and Kara Burke did a collaboration at McGuffey. Anyway, I didn't realize what the Laban connection was with her sort of viewpoints work. That's really interesting.
But so we started using the viewpoints for Lewis and Clark, and then the viewpoints gave us this codified structure. And from my point of view, it was interesting because it gave the actors something real, a little structure to hang on to. Whereas when I had been working before, I had just done it, brought that in a very fluid way. This was a very structured way to bring that information into the actors.
And then you used that to work with John on Venus, I believe.
Exactly. So when we came into Venus, Venus is a really, really hard, difficult show because it involves exploitation. Exploitation by race, by gender, by political, like the imperial colonial scientific definition of everybody other than those people at the heart of the colonial dominance. And it also involves voyeurism and betrayal and commodification of individuals. You know, this body part brings in this much money, that person brings in that much money. It's about ownership, it's about control, it's about love, passion, lust, fetishism, infatuation. I mean, you name it. And so it was a really tough show, especially within the community theater environment, because the community theater, you know, you have the people who've trained in New York and with Stella Adler, and people who actors who've never been on the stage before, you know. And so how do you bring everyone onto the same page?
Well, speaking of bringing actors in, this is a perfect transition to bring in our other guest for the evening. Teresa Dowell-Vest was in the cast of Venus and in fact played the titular role. And welcome, Teresa. Thank you for joining us again. For those of you who watched 30 and 30 last night, Teresa was also our guest last night, and we appreciate so much that you agreed to appear 2 nights in a row. I mean, how
2 nights in a row, a little double feature. No, that's all. Thank you so much for
Perfect. Hello. Hi.
Hey, Miki, how you doing, hon?
I'm doing just fine. It feels like yesterday when we just saw each other. Oh gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah, this whole series has enabled us to reconnect and just kind of find each other again. And I'm just so happy to see your face and spend this time with you this evening.
Teresa, for those
so happy to see your face.
Well, and for those who don't know you as well as Miki and may not be as familiar with your work and who maybe missed your appearance last night, could you tell us just briefly about your work and your relationship to live arts?
Sure. I am from Charlottesville, born and raised in Albemarle County, and I came home after studying in Los Angeles, studying in grad school at Cal State Long Beach, and tripped and fell into just an amazing theater house to watch Once on This Island. That was my introduction to live arts. And after just cultivating some relationships, I was able to produce my one-woman show, Counting Stars and Smelling Roses, in the experimental stage. And that just blossomed an opportunity to direct 7 Guitars, to write Vinegar Hill for the company. I appeared in Wit and The Women and Venus, which we're going to talk about tonight.
Oh my gosh, that's an amazing history. I'm so fortunate. I feel as someone who joined Live Arts more recently, it's just so exciting for me to get to put all these community connections together. So thank you.
This is a true homecoming. It absolutely is. And I have a handful of my students watching. I'm the director of film and television production at Prairie View A&M University here in Houston, and they're eager to hear about the exploits
no doubt
of PDV and Venus. So I think tonight's going to be a joy for them as well.
Well, if you don't mind, let's transition into the slideshow from the 2000-2001 season. I know that you all were involved to various degrees in this season. So as we go through the shows, any sort of memories that you want to offer, please do share with us. I obviously was not in town to get to see any of these shows, so I'm encountering all of them for the first time, but I'm really excited to have you all here to help us. And so first in that season was Closer. Is that,
yeah. Yep.
That was by Patrick Marver and directed by Kristen Keithley. Did either of you see this show? Yes,
I remember very, very vividly this production, watching Sean do some incredible, masterful work. It's interesting, on the front cover of the program there. It's the 10th anniversary. At that point, we were celebrating 10 years.
Wow.
And here we are, celebrating another
Almost
2
30.
decades later. Yeah, I mean,
That's
it's
wild.
pretty phenomenal, and how time flies. But yeah, really sophisticated piece of work for a small ensemble. And they just handled this material beautifully.
For those of you, I think I've said Sean, and then now Teresa has as well, but we mean Sean Richards, of course, who is now co-owner of Market Street Wine Shop, and they are doing delivery. Little shout out to Market Street Wine Shop. Just saying.
And who I
I
knew
need to work that out.
from The Visit.
Oh, yes.
Along with many other, but The Visit was one of those. Oh, and here's Primer. Yes. Zen Monkey Project. The Zen Monkey Project inspiration for this was the McGuffey Reader, and the directors on this one were Catherine Birdsall and Ray Schwartz. It had a larger cast, but it was, again, Live Arts was reaching out to dancers, contemporary dancers, working in non-narrative ways to impart their interpretation of the different books or whatever. So this was Catherine and Ray, and actually their history goes back to Miki Listz Dance Company First Friday series, where Catherine met Ray as he was doing a First Friday dance in the studio at McGuffey.
Miki, wasn't Jennifer Tweel Kelly involved with Primer as well?
Yes, Jen Tweel Kelly was in this one, and Linda Blondell, who was one of the original dancers for Miki Listz Dance Company, was also in this, yes.
Just wanted to make sure to mention her because she's teaching a class for Live Arts. She's now Alexander Technique teacher, and she's fabulous. So just wanted to mention her. And then the women, which I believe came up last night, and something about a drawer, something. Is that ringing any bells for you, Teresa?
That daggone Cindy Burke, she gonna find a way always. We spent night after night trying to break Cindy Burke, who happens to be on my back in this image right here. I tell you, this show was a riot, an absolute extravaganza of fun. It really was.
It was fabulous.
And just the most dynamic.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, we had a ball. We laughed. I think this picture actually depicts the nature and the emotional temperature of our troupe for this show, because we had so much fun and belonged to each other and trusted each other, and that whole collective.
But another person that was Edna Jackie Miller was in that show too, wasn't she? She was.
Yeah.
Edna Jackie Miller was in there, and coming in from the dance world again.
Yeah.
Had a troupe in Charlottesville and a small dance studio in Charlottesville. And
she also had a troupe in Richmond too at that time, didn't she? I think she had a dance troupe, or it split her.
Yeah, she was all over. Yes, she had many.
That's
many places where she was active.
Right there. That is an amazing shot. I mean, this was directed by John Gibson, I should mention. So he had a busy season. My goodness.
And Daria Okugawa and Kay Ferguson, and this is
an amazing collection of talent.
It was awesome.
The Rocky Horror Show by Richard O'Brien and directed by John Owen. Did either of you catch this? I'm really sad to have missed it.
It really was an event. They had the midnight showings like you would go to the movies to see, everyone dressed up. It was such a party. And just nothing surprising for live arts in terms of the risk taken,
Yeah.
and just exploring some rich theater. Look at these
Yeah, for
people.
sure. Look, this whoever, I'm gonna figure out who did costumes for it because they had a lot of fun. So it was
Yeah.
directed by John Owen, costume designer Kate Andrews. Anyway,
Yeah.
and most importantly, we should mention Venus, also by Susan Laurie Parks, also directed by John Gibson.
Yeah. You know, this entire season, just when you talk about taking risk, every show that we've seen from Closer all the way through, to the closing of the season, every show swung for the fences in terms of, bending your imagination, not remotely about being comfortable. Everything had this sort of edge to it, or wonderment to it, where you knew you were going in for an out of body experience in some way, form, or fashion.
Well, yeah, well, in Venus, for sure. I mean, you're watching poetry presented as a play. It's like the script is written with almost musical direction and notes in the director, in the instructions, and so everything about Venus has to be filled in with the imagination in ways that you don't have in just a straight narrative play.
Yeah.
So
this is an incredibly dynamic shot. I feel like showcasing the work of both of you, both movement and character work here.
Yeah, this is with Misty Vredenberg, and that push-pull relationship between Venus and the Mother Showman. The Mother Showman was a character depicting the person that ran the circus, the freak show that Venus was a part of. And, they were allies and adversaries at the same time, because, here in this climate, we had these two women who had no business gaining success in any sort of way, and somehow they kind of turned this whole construct upside down, where they both benefited in great ways. I think a lot of times we think about the play and the actual person, Sergey Bartman, as being this 100% exploited, devastating character, but she was also an entrepreneur. And during the height of her time in the quote unquote freak show and the show of curiosities, she knew that she was the Beyonce of the day. and it's interesting that about 4 years ago, Beyonce actually referenced Sergey Bartman in shaping some of the work as she developed Lemonade. And so, this empowered Black woman, this body and spirit, who, seems like was on the receiving end of all the harsh realities you can imagine, she also found some strength in herself and what she wanted in the world. Yeah.
Wow. And the final 2 shows of the season ran in repertory. Oscar Wilde's Importance of Being Earnest, as directed by Betsy Tucker, who I believe is appearing on 30 Festival tomorrow night. And then it ran in rep. Oh, and as we see, again, an incredible all-star cast. I also recognize some of the production people. I see a Corey Jo Lloyd, and I see a Daphne in there.
Yeah.
So that looks like an incredible show. Did you all see this one?
Go for it, Miki.
I've seen as many of these. I've seen this one, and I love when the acting is very crisp, and everything about this show was very, very crisp and restrained in ways that were such a relief from from Venus, which is wildly wildly physical and so in terms of the live arts season, it was a really interesting season to have that range of productions. Yeah.
I think the year before, I'd worked with Betsy on a production of Marisol at UVA, and I was a true believer after that. And she gold touch, whatever she touched, she had the Midas touch. And this in rep production, but with her and Fran, I mean, you just couldn't have found two better directors to complement each other and give us the goods.
Absolutely. So this is from Travesties, as directed by Fran Smith, our very own Fran Smith, who has already appeared on 30 and 30, and I think she's going to make another appearance. Indefatigable now as then, and just such an important part of the work that we do. And in fact, both Betsy and Fran had shows at Live Arts this season. We should be opening Betsy's version of The Children this Friday, if all had gone as planned. But anyway, thank you so much for walking me through that season. That was really fun to hear both of your memories. And I'd like to return to our conversation about Venus, because Miki, I'd really like for you to talk a little more about your movement and choreography work on Venus and how that informed the final production.
The movement, John wanted to use the viewpoints as a springboard for different scenes, and so John would come to me, and we would in our discussions we would talk about the various viewpoints that were relevant to various portions of the play. Some scenes were more tempo and gesture directed. Some were more shape and architecture, had more shape and architecture energy. So for the viewpoints, for those the people who may not know what they are, they're different ways to codify movement. And in, for instance, the viewpoint of time, within the viewpoint of time, there's tempo, which is the rate of speed for your activity, or there's duration, which is how long each movement lasts, or there's this kinesthetic response, which is if I go bump, then you have to do this immediate reaction. And then there's internal and external repetition, just how does that impact what you're doing. And then there are these viewpoints of space, which are more like shape directed. Shape is the contour can be a physical shape, and it can be stationary or it can be moving in space. There's gesture, which is a movement of a limb with a clear beginning, middle, and end. There's the architecture of the space, which is the actor's relationship to the set and to the entire environment. And within that, there are the dimensions of how does the set feel? What the solid mass of the shape, the texture of the set, the light that's shining on you. What energy do you get from that? What the colors that are around you? What energy can you get from that? And then within, then there's spatial relationships, which are the distances between yourself and the set, or another actor, another piece of a prop or something on the set. So, and then finally, there's this element of topography, which is it's the floor pattern that you use in the space, and the design you create with other people in the space. And all of these are designed to bring the actors into a way of approaching the script that is not the typical, I'm going to read my script, this is my character, that's somebody else's character. And the reason for that is that this, there within Venus, for sure, there's a lot of shape shifting. There's the chorus, for instance, is first there's a chorus of the 8 human wonders, and then there's the chorus of the anatomists, and then there's a chorus of the spectators, and the ensemble has to be able to just shift from one to the other to the other to the other, and often with no costume change. So they have to have these physical landmarks and physical cues to be able to latch on to be able to get themselves through this this wondrous writing of Susan Laurie Parks, which is also enormously difficult to work with.
So
because it's written almost like jazz, with stop here, pause here, you know, sort of like a musical score.
Teresa, you were saying earlier, I think that during the rehearsal process, they took the script out for a while. Is that?
Yeah, you know, I'm so appreciative that Miki really set us up with the basis of the viewpoints, because that's where our rehearsals began. You know, with your typical, when you're an actor, the first go-to is, once I get the script, I'm going to look to see how many pages I'm on, how many lines I have, how many, you know, just the vanity type stuff of knowing how long you're going to be on stage and what that might look like. And what John and Miki did right out the gate was eliminate that inclination, because we started without the text. We had these exercises. At first, you know, it seemed abstract, and then Miki came and educated us. I mean, we were sitting in one of the dance studios upstairs above Live Arts, just sitting there having class and feeding off of every bit of what Miki was sharing with us, that would essentially become our textbook in a sense, the viewpoints being our education. And I remember early on, one of the exercises was we had these masks that had no mouth, and they were just eyes. So they were these yellow masks that you put on your face, and all you had were your bodies and your connection you made with someone by looking them square in their eyes, and you had no other choice. The moment you lost eye contact, you lost communication, like you lost the connection, right? And the more we rehearsed that, the more we became so in tune with the options of viewpoints within the storytelling. And then we were given the script. I liken it to when I, you know, growing up playing basketball, Coach Skip Hudgens, he would have us running laps and doing suicides and practicing full-on practices without the basketball. And at first, you know, we were like, the ball is the main tool of the sport. You know, how are we to move forward? And what we learned was how to always move for the sport, always know how to instinctually play the game, as opposed to worrying about how many baskets and scoring and, you know, being the superstar. How do you move as a unit? How do you move as a team? And this was no different. I felt like I've experienced something very familiar working with Miki and John in that, in those early exercises. And then obviously as see, we needed it.
I did want to shout out the mask maker. The mask design was actually Russell Richards, who had a studio at McGuffey for many years. So I saw that little piece of trivia and I thought that was interesting.
Man, yeah, well, God bless them, because you know, and we were pouring sweat. I mean, we were working so hard just with our eyes, moving around the room, just making that connection with those masks. So it was a priceless experience.
Well, with actors, I think, and especially with ensemble acting, getting on the same page is essential, but also with any acting, getting out of your own way is really critical, and finding a neutral physicality, something that isn't your own physicality. It's something, and it's not something that you're trying to superimpose, but you want to get out of your own way and not act, but just be, and be present, and then be able to bring to the scene what that scene requires, no more, no less. You know, having just the right amount, and feeling important, for everyone to feel equally important on that stage, whether you're on with 55 other people or 5 other people, that everybody has got to be physically and emotionally and mentally on the same page. So that was part of that effort.
Miki, would you mind? Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, if Miki and Teresa, you wanted to set up the scene that we're going to hear, or it's not really a scene, but the little portion of the script. But Teresa, if you had another point to make, I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of what she just said, because you know the piece that a lot of people want to go to with Venus was the fact that I was on stage nude. And when you talk about operating as one, as a single unit, as an ensemble, I've told people I wasn't nude on that stage. The storytelling, the body was made available because the ensemble took care of each other, and in that respect, I had no fear or worry. There was one night during rehearsals. We'd rehearsed for a good long while before, I started disrobing. There were at least 3 or 4 times in the show where I was either fully naked, the very opening of the show, the final monologue of the show, were the 2 times where I stood completely naked. And then there were times where, the mother showman is saying, strip down, girl. And they're, the chorus, the men from the chorus are literally pulling, the fabrics off of me and getting me ready for the entry into the freak show. And then when Sergey is in prison, she's in that outdoor cage. My yellow dress was starting to lose its bind on me, and it would fall off my shoulder. And I remember one night it completely, the freedom of just going, it is just what it is, for that, was just awesome. But we rehearsed with me fully dressed until it was time. And that night was probably the most nervous I was during that whole process, production included, the run included, because we had become so close. And James Muhammad, he played the Negro Resurrectionist, and James and I grew up together. I'd known, him my whole life. And all of a sudden there was a pang of, I'm going to take my clothes off in front of James. I don't know how I feel about that. And so this is what happened. We start the run, and I do the disrobing piece. And John had everyone sit in the house. And I asked him, he asked me if that was okay. I said, please, that actually helps break the ice. It's perfectly fine. I have no problem with that. Until it began. And I thought, oh, I was wide open with that moment. And then all of a sudden, without any prompting or any cue, all the men did like this. And I'm just weeping. I'm just bawling. And there was a moment of respect from the men that Sarah never got. The Sergey never got. Sometimes people call her Sarah and Sergey. And in that moment, I felt so safe and protected, because they, it would be so easy to kind of look and gawk a little bit, or just out of the shock of, oh my goodness, this is really happening. Like, I'm in a show that somebody's, that sort of moment. And it never happened. But then opening night, house is full. The word is out that we had this crazy, awesome show, but I don't think people knew that I was going to be naked. Some people knew, yes, but the audience at large had no idea. And so I come out in my street clothes, I stand center stage, and I begin disrobing. And now I'm down to nothing. I take off the last little bit, and I'm standing there nude, and Misty and Annalise come out to do, just as they're about to walk out, you can hear a pin drop in the room, a pin, until someone whispered, it was almost like they must have looked up and saw me and I was naked, and they were like, oh my gosh, she ain't got no clothes on. And when I heard, oh my gosh, she ain't got no clothes on, it took everything to keep from laughing. Like I'm standing there trying to be statuesque and have the women dress me. And I can feel like beads of sweat forming because it just broke the ice enough. And then not until later in the run, we're in the second half of the show, the second act. And we realized there was this gentleman sitting on the front row. Like if we're on the stage here to my right, there was a gentleman sitting on the front row, and he must have had a long, hard day at work because he was falling asleep. And I was like, okay, all right. And he happened to have been sitting right where my final monologue was going to take place in the spotlight. And I'm to take the prosthetic, the latex butt that Michael Muller, spent dedicated hours experimenting on what's the best way to have this, this big booty added to me, basically. And so there's the final monologue where I step out of it, I take it off and I step out of it, and I'm holding it up as I'm talking about Sergey's remains being held at the Musée de l'Homme in France until, pretty much just before we open the show. And there's, this monologue essentially, and I look over and he's still asleep. So I just kind of turn my body so that he's just going to get a full eyeful. And I held one of the lines just a touch long enough where he opened his eyes, he realized there's a silence. And then the jump that came out of him that, the 6 foot tall Black woman is standing there holding a butt almost at him, naked. And, he was asleep. He had to have been asleep because I would have been worried he was dead or something. You got to be, but he jumped up, and there was this moment, and, it was just an powerful experience. I was, in those moments, I don't know how many other times in my life I've felt as powerful.
That is an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh my gosh.
In these very difficult productions, you only are able to feel powerful if you feel safe. Mm. And from my point of view, coming into difficult scenes like rape scenes and for sure your nudity, which is not the same as nudity of hair. Everybody's disrobed, everybody stands there naked and sings. This is a voyeuristic and fetishist kind of nudity. That kind of emotional and physical safety is determined by the structure of I know what is going to happen, and it's really, really important to establish that, which in order for you to be able to then bring what you need to your role. And that's what all of these viewpoints and then and the physical structure underlying what you're doing becomes really critical, and that's why we just hammered those hammer, because without that you're up there literally naked, not naked in the role.
Yeah.
Which is really different.
Yeah, and that's what I say, throughout that entire run. I was never alone in that. I felt the cheering on of John and Michael and, you know, you and the entire production staff. And of course, the ensemble, they were just as naked as I was in all those moments because we were a unit. And, you know, John was gracious during the planning and the rehearsal of the show because he kept checking in. He was like, you know, I know what we're talking about doing, but there's always another way, you know. And I said, let's go.
Yeah.
As I talked about debt last night, you know, debt to our characters, debt to the work, to the research. I said, you know, I'm telling Sargey's story and it's my story and we are one and I'm going to use my body to tell it. So yeah, it was
That's
good.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of telling Sergey's story, Miki, would you mind setting us up a little bit for what we're going to
Yes,
hear?
you know,
Teresa
we've been
jump in?
talking about Venus, but if people are not familiar with the story, Venus is a member of the Kainai tribe in South Africa, and she is brought to England by a Dutch doctor, and she's exhibited in England I think it was in 1810. And she dies 5 years later after a year in Paris. But she is, after which there's a plaster cast made of her body. And then her body, her skeleton is displayed at the Musée de l'Homme. But these freak shows, they would during the colonial era, these freak shows would happen because people would bring in people who were not freaks. They were just members of a different cultural group, but they would be introduced into the society as oddities, and they become, they aren't born freaks, they're just created freaks. And so in this scene that Teresa is going to recite, to play, she is the doctor who brings her to England has this love-lust scientific observer, you know, longing scientific, very, very complex relationship with Venus. And at one point she becomes his mistress, and he gives her these chocolates, which she's never had.
So Venus by Susan Laurie Parks, and this is Teresa Dowell-Vest.
So this monologue comes at the very end of Venus's life, and to depict the refinement that she knew to retain, having had a relationship with Dr. George Cuvier. He continuously tried to make her, it's almost like a you know, an educating reader, or, you know, just kind of creating a new person out of a person. And so not thinking that she was catching the education just before her death while in an outdoor cage where she was exposed to the weather, she recited what is called a brief history of chocolate. The chocolate is literally the chocolate that was given to her by Cuvier, but it's also a love letter to Black women all over. A brief history of chocolate. It is written in the ancient chronicles that the gods one day looked down with pity on the people as they struggled. The gods resolved to visit the people and teach them the ways of love, for love helps in times of hardship. The gods gave to the people a little shrub that had until then belonged only to the gods. This was the cacao tree. Time passed again. We find ourselves in the 19th century. The Aztec word cacao, literally food of the gods, becomes chocolate and cocoa. The cacao bean, once used as money, becomes an exotic beverage. Chocolate was soon mixed with milk and sugar and formed into little lozenges one could eat on the run. Chocolate lozenges are now available in a variety of shapes, shades, with nuts and brandy. Chocolate is a recognized emotional stimulant. For doctors have noticed the tendencies of certain persons, especially women, to go on chocolate binges in an effort to handle emotionally upsetting incidents or in an effort to better handle incidences which may be emotionally upsetting. All of this is interesting in that it has become the practice to give a gift of chocolate when professing love. This practice started some time ago, continues to this day. While chocolate was once a stimulant and a source of nutrition, it is primarily today a great source of fat. And of course, pleasure. I love you, Sergey. I love you, Miki.
That was wonderful.
I love you, John. I love you, Live Arts.
We love you.
Love
Thank
you.
you.
Love
Thank you
you,
so
John.
much. Thank you so much to both
Teresa.
of you.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank
Miller.
all.
Thank
Oh my
you so
gosh.
much.
Thanks, Miller.
Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to say to everyone to please be sure to join us tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. We'll be talking about the 2001-2002 season with the woman, the legend, director Betsy Tucker. If you'd like to help us continue our mission of forging theater and community, donate to our Forge Ahead campaign. I think the link is pinned to the comments. And again, just thank you so much to these two incredible talents for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having us.